Hey there, thanks for joining us on the Chief Executive Aviator. I'm Simon Turner, your host, and you're wondering what we're all about. Well, we're pilots who happen to run businesses, or maybe we're business people who happen to fly. Either way, we've figured out that flying gives us a serious edge. Every week, I sit down with another pilot entrepreneur or executive who's discovered that their plane isn't just some cool ride, it's actually a secret weapon for growing their business. We're talking real stories about landing deals and actual landings, expanding markets, and yes, still making it home in time for dinner. Whether you're already flying for business or you're just dreaming about it, you're going to hear some pretty amazing stories about how aviation changes the trajectory of lives and businesses every day. So get your pre-flight done. We've got a great conversation headed your way. All right. Well, Matt, welcome to the Chief Executive Aviator podcast. We're excited to have you on today. Before we get started, I have to do the standard disclaimer that this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. It's not intended to replace your certified flight instructor or any FAA regulations. And as always, we encourage you to go to your CFI with any questions. And of course, do more training with both on both the ground and in the air, and approach proficiency and the regulations like your life depends on it, because it does. Matt, really excited to have you here. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into aviation.
Yeah, you bet. My name is Matt Waits. I live in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I was the CEO of a precision ag software company called SST Software, and that's a business that I joined in 1999, and we sold solutions all over the U.S., but mostly in agricultural regions. Mm-hmm. And living in a small town and trying to travel to all these other rural communities just made no sense from a commercial aviation standpoint. Mm-hmm. And so I and the rest of our sales team, account managers, drove, and we drove all over the country, mostly to places like Iowa and Illinois and mm-hmm. and that kind of market. One day I met a guy who was talking about how he had flown his wife up to dinner in Kansas City last night. And I was like, wait, tell me about that. And so he started telling me, and I kind of went through the economics of it with him, and I thought, I could afford that. Like, why are we not mm-hmm. doing that? And so I immediately went and signed up at the local flight school. About a month into that, I decided to buy a 182, mm-hmm. and that fully committed me to it.
Yeah.
And then I spent every day that I could flying and got my pilot's license, and
yeah,
and used it mostly for business travel, and kind of worked my way up through airplanes over time.
Yeah, brilliant. And in terms of your kind of start in aviation, it seems like it's not something you grew up around necessarily, but you have some family history in aviation, it sounds like.
Yeah, my grandpa was a pilot and pretty active, GA pilot mm-hmm. in Southwest Kansas. And then my dad got his pilot's license when I was little, but he stopped flying when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And then I had a great uncle that was a flight instructor, and he trained all of his kids and grandkids. And so there's a lot of pilots in the family, probably 10. Most of them are, just sort of hobby mm-hmm. flying kind of guys. But I was definitely, exposed to it, but I had it in my mind that it was out of reach financially. Mm-hmm. And I think it just came from when I was a kid talking to my grandpa and saying, I'm saying, what does this cost? And he's like, this plane cost me $50,000. And to me, that just seemed like, crazy. Oh my God, this is so expensive. I'll never be able to do anything like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wasn't really around it all that much. And then, one day I just kind of thought, oh my, why would I not do this? So
yeah,
it's been a great addition to my life for sure.
Brilliant. And it sounds like independence and entrepreneurship was maybe in the family as well. And you had a bit of exposure to that growing up as well.
Yes. It's crazy. Most of the people in my family have had their own businesses. I mean, I'm I'm actually the first one on either side that wasn't a farmer at some point in his life.
Yeah.
So there's that, we're pretty rural people close to that. But even within that, my grandpa and my dad, my uncles, they've all ventured out into different businesses, oil and gas businesses or cattle, feedlots or,
Yep.
stuff like that. And then my dad is the one that founded the company that I ran. So he started the precision ag business in 1994 when I was in high school.
Yep.
And so I, got to see that in the early days when I was a teenager and in college and got excited about it and kind of followed him into that. But
That's awesome.
yeah, it's something, I think I had mentioned to you before that my dad and my grandpa were both entrepreneurial guys. They were also big motorcyclists.
Yeah.
Kind of followed in their footsteps, and I've just
Yeah.
seen that the personalities kind of all go together.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of an appetite for some level of risk taking, but with a little bit of calculation and that kind of the freedom of riding a motorcycle it feels a little bit like flying a little plane. The aviation journey started all from that one chance sort of meeting with someone who flew his wife to dinner, but then the 182 was the first start. How was that? I'm assuming you learned to fly in a 182 as opposed to a 172 like a lot of us.
Yeah, I did like 20 hours in a PA 28 between a 140 and a 180.
Yeah.
And then, decided, I'm committed to this. I might as well train in my own plane. So I went and bought a 182 and finished it out
Yeah.
in the 182. And it was a turbo 182, 2001 model I bought in 2009.
Nice.
So it was pretty new.
Yep.
Great plane. I mean, I actually really loved it.
Yeah.
But so this happened like, in the fall, and just a couple months later, my wife comes to me and says, "Guess what? I'm pregnant." And I was like, I just bought a 4-seater airplane. We had 2 kids.
Oh
no. She has not let me live that down yet. That was my first reaction. I just bought a 4-seater. So we had to upgrade. We upgraded to a Bonanza
What a
after
great
that.
excuse to upgrade. I mean,
Yeah.
it worked
Yeah.
out. It worked out in the end.
Yeah,
That's pretty
exactly.
fun. So tell us a little bit about the businesses you're in now, because you've got quite a lot of exposure to aviation from a business perspective as well.
Right. For years, all I did was go out to my hangar, pull my plane out, and take off and fly. And I got into none of the politics of the airport.
Yeah.
No business. I just stayed out of all that. But a few years ago, my CPA came to me and said, "Hey, there's an opportunity to buy the FBO in Stillwater," and he wanted to do that himself with some partners. So I partnered with him and a couple of our friends.
Cool.
Bought the Stillwater Flight Center, and we're the only FBO in Stillwater, which is a Class D airport, has American Airlines in and out a couple times a day. OSU's flight school is there with 50-some planes.
Yeah.
And so, got into that. And then I became friends with a guest that you had on here a while back, Devin Wanzer.
Yeah.
And he and I were talking about how there's just no planes to rent in Stillwater. So, hey, let's solve that problem. So we bought a couple of planes and put them out for rent.
Yeah.
And then that evolved into buying the little Part 61 flight school, which we've rebranded as Crosswind Aviation.
Yep.
And so now I've got a little flight school out there
Awesome.
with him and the FBO.
Yeah, cool. And do you have any other business, or are you still doing the agriculture business as well, the precision?
No, I got out of that. So we sold that company to a big British multinational
Awesome.
in 2018.
Yeah.
And then I worked for them for 5 years after that and left the beginning of 23.
Nice.
But that, got a good cash infusion during that. And nothing really changed that significantly in my life. I didn't do anything stupid with exception of
Buying
I
an
went and bought
FPO and
a
buying
brand.
a school.
Well, but those are justifiable business things.
Yeah,
But I went and bought a brand new Piper M350 in 2018,
nice.
and that was, I swore I would never buy a brand new airplane. That I thought only fools would do such a thing, but I ended up doing it.
The smell of the nice new leather on the demo plane got you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Love it.
So that was the next step up. I think I had about 300 hours in the 182, and then I did like 700 hours in the Bonanza.
Yep.
And so I was, north of 1,000 hours and went to the M350, which added
Yep.
pressurization and G1000. And we had that a couple years. And then we bought a house in Colorado, and we were trying, going in and out of the mountains in the summer. And my kids were teenagers, and
A lot more
I
weight to
thought,
carry and
no,
that sort of stuff.
yeah, I was still having to do a lot of weight and balance calculations and be careful about screw this. I'm just going to upgrade again. So I went up to the M600
Awesome.
and got the turbine. So
Did you do a
that's been a
new one
lot.
of those too, or did you?
No, no, about a 2016, which is the first year they made the M600. It's the G3000.
Nice.
And, PA 46 to PA 46 from that M350 to M600, there's a lot of similarities. It's really just moving to the turbo prop,
Yep.
which, I found pretty easy to do. I mean, by that time I had 1,500 hours under my belt, and
Yep.
uh, so
And so,
yeah, it's been good, like good transitions. I've
yeah.
kind of followed the dream playbook if the insurance companies were to lay it
Yeah.
out.
Yep. Yep. We've talked to a lot of those insurance companies with the aircraft broking sort of business that I've got, and it's amazing how much you can save from an insurance perspective for having like a pretty steady progression path as opposed to just going, hey, I've flown an SR20 and got my private in that, and then all of a sudden I want to like step up into a Vision Jet or something like that, and you're paying $150,000 in insurance every year or more.
Right. Yes.
Versus if you'd just gone and spent 2 years in an SR22, or if you'd taken a non-cirrus path, you could have gone and done a 182 or get an old retractable 182 and get some retract time. Is just might save you
Yeah.
$60,000 in insurance later on.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I've looked back on and thought I did it right because I didn't have enough money to do it wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It was like buying a couple $100,000 182 back then was a big deal, and going to every step was kind of a big step. But then I was in my early 30s when I started. I run across a lot of people now who are in their 40s or 50s, and they want to get into it, and they've got plenty of money, and like you're saying, they just want to take those big jumps right out of the gate.
yeah,
It's like, not only can you not afford the insurance on that, I just don't think it's as safe either, right? You end up flying around with a flight instructor who's making a lot of the tough decisions for a lot of those hours.
yeah, sure.
I think you're better off taking your time, working your way up through it, getting the real world experience.
Yeah, and you probably were able over the, I think you're now up to 2,000 or more hours, and you progressed all your way through to a M600, and you probably were able to slowly push your boundaries each and every flight and each and every time, as opposed to taking those huge leaps. And it does feel like the safety margins and the Swiss cheese can line up a lot more easily when you take those big leaps and get behind the plane, or there's just a lot more things that can go wrong. And as you say, you might have to spend 100 hours with the CFI in the right seat, or flying you around, and you kind of then they become a crutch, and it's
Yeah, that's the part I would get concerned about, is that crutch part.
yeah,
Because there's a lot you don't learn getting your pilot's license
yeah,
about the real world,
yeah,
and you just have to get out there and do it and experience it. And there's going to be some scary moments, and you just have to learn how to have the right kind of decision making and
yeah.
and everything. So I would definitely caution anybody from, getting too far ahead of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of your flying, a lot of it you mentioned is sort of being to create time arbitrage. It's kind of you've shrunk your world immensely, getting from point to point to back in nowhere, Iowa from Stillwater. That would be a multi-leg commercial and multi-day kind of commercial flight for you if you were to route through Dallas or wherever on American or whatever airline you could fly on. But it's now sort of changed these sort of journeys, or it did to same day loops. Do you have any sort of deals or relationships you were able to build only because you had that ability to jump in the 182 and get up into Kansas in an hour as opposed to driving 5 or 6 hours to get there? Or yeah, if you've
Yeah.
got any stories, that would be cool to hear.
Well, one thing about getting into this is you have to have the right kind of setup for a small plane.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I just happened to be in a place where none of my customers were in this region.
Yep.
Like Oklahoma, I mean, Oklahoma's got some agriculture, but nothing like the corn belt
Mm-hmm.
of Iowa, Illinois, and all of that. But I didn't have to go to the coast either, so it was kind of a perfect
Yeah.
distance for these types of planes I started out in. And so I have a lot of, I mean, it made a big impact in my life from driving, leaving Monday and spending all day driving and then all day Friday driving
Yeah.
and, driving in between and all of that. Really able to tighten that up, as you said. Probably the best singular story is that right about the time I started flying, we got a deal with Monsanto,
Mm-hmm.
the big seed and chemical company in St.
Yep.
Louis. And as part of that deal, we committed to being on site every month.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just me. I needed to take, a few other people. And being able to knock that down from an 8-hour drive each way to a 2-hour flight was a
Yeah.
huge difference maker for us. And so it made it just super simple to create that relationship, to just buzz up there and back in a single day. And I used it like that a lot. The ability to just be talking to somebody and say, hey, can I, it sounds like I need to come see you. Can I come see you tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I fly over there and I'm there for a 9 a.m. meeting and I'm out at noon and I'm back home. My wife didn't even know I left
Yeah.
town. Yeah.
Yeah, that is it is the time machine, that's for sure. I mean, for
Yeah.
the owner operator kind of CEO that's thinking, hey, I'm gonna fly and I'm going to buy my first sort of serious traveling aeroplane. How would you sort of think from an ROI perspective? Like, do you just think, hey, time saved, or like, hey, I can be at that 9 a.m. meeting that I wouldn't have, been able to do? Or is the high value thing for you getting home so your wife doesn't know that you're in St. Louis for the day, or being home with your family?
I mean, all of that is really important. I think from an ROI perspective, when you're I think of it sort of as thresholds, like being able to go from an 8-hour drive to a 2-hour flight has a major impact.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take that much plane to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that in a Bonanza or whatever.
Yep.
And those are very affordable planes to fly, all those small single engine pistons. The economics are not hard to make pencil out when you're
Yeah.
you're you're not spending dollars on hotels, you're not spending dollars on alcohol
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of costs that get cut out.
Yeah.
When you go beyond that, it gets harder to
Mm-hmm.
pencil out. And I think it just turns into more of I have the money to do it and
Yeah.
it's more comfortable, it's safer, it's a little bit faster,
Yeah.
you know. Um, but there's a point it gets hard to justify and it just becomes I have the capability to do it and
Yeah.
I feel like it's that, I'd rather have more speed and time than the money it cost me and
Totally.
you know.
Yeah, we always say 20% more will cost you 80% more,
And that seems to, as you get even further up, it probably turns into 20% more, actually costs you 180% more in a lot of cases. So
Yeah.
once you get up
Yeah.
out of those single engine pistons, it starts to get pretty expensive quickly. But as you say, is adds that layer of safety and that little bit of extra speed, and the ROI becomes a different calculation. I think
Yeah.
then.
They're the biggest, the capability of the M600, which is a turboprop, over the M350, which is a piston. It really wasn't about the speed because that is marginal.
Yep.
It was number one, the capability, but I'll tell you, being behind a, a turbine engine has been, there's a lot of peace of mind
Yeah.
in that. My grandfather told me way back, like, hey, you start flying this a lot, you're going to end up flying at night a lot because you're going to have business deals in the winter and
Yep.
you're going to look down and half your time's at night. You better be careful, and he really cautioned me against flying at night through all of that.
Yep.
And I pretty much avoided it. I mean, with a piston, I just thought, I know the odds are still super low,
Hmm.
but I couldn't get it out of my head
I'm the same.
flying
Yeah.
across the Midwest in the middle of the night,
Mhm.
especially if you're in the mountains or something. It's
Yeah.
just, I'm sitting there constantly looking at the nearest map
Yeah. Yeah.
of how far can I glide? Can I glide to an
Yeah.
airport from here? So yeah, that's been a really nice component of going up to the turboprop.
For sure. I mean, I'm the same as I fly a turbo retractable 182, and I typically don't fly at night. I keep my proficiency up and do kind of like local stuff, and occasionally at night just in case I get sort of stuck. But um,
Yeah.
I'll sleep the night somewhere rather than fly back, even if it's a route I know. Last week I was in Bentonville and something went late, and I just ended up staying the night there because I knew I'd be flying back in the dark, and it was I just don't like that feeling of, as you say, like you're constantly thinking, where am I going? Because there's a whole lot of dark down there, and I don't know what it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hear. And then when you do go up to the turbine, at least you can see trends before anything happens. And, it's a little bit more. Yeah, you have particularly if you're behind a PT6, you have millions and millions and millions of hours without any incident, or any kind of sort of
Right.
sharp cut off. In terms of safety, um, how do you sort of think about that for these business trips? Because you've got sometimes weather that's involved. Even the M600, you've still got to be, you know, cautious from a weather perspective. But then also, you're away for a 10-hour day, and then you're sort of turning around to come home and that sort of thing. Do you ever sort of think, hey, I need to take another pilot with me that's going to maybe share the workload, or like how do you sort of think of those kind of decisions, and then the wider kind of your thoughts on from a safety perspective for entrepreneurial pilots?
Yeah. Well, I've never been in a position to um, take a second pilot.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just, I actually, my piloting journey and everything has sort of been as a loner. I didn't have like a group of friends I was hanging around with doing the same
Hmm.
thing, or anybody like anything like that. And um, so it had to be just about decision making.
Yep.
And it, the first few times that I had to push a meeting because of weather was extremely uncomfortable. But then I realized, these meetings, it doesn't, it's not the end of the world to say, hey, I can't be there on
Hmm.
Tuesday, let's push it to Thursday, or let's move it back a week or two. I mean, and people were understanding, and a lot of my customers all knew I was flying around in a little plane, and so they kind of got used to the fact that that was part of my thing.
Yeah.
Was it's like I'll be there if the weather's good.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So that's a big part of it. Other things though that you go to customer meetings, and a lot of times you're going out to dinner and you're drinking and you're going to
Hmm.
conferences and that sort of thing, and there's that 8 hours bottle to
Yeah.
throttle rule, but that only works if you drink, a couple of drinks.
Yep. Yeah. You can't go out and have a bender and then think you're going to wake up 8 hours
Yeah,
later and be sharp.
that's right. You have got to be cautious about that,
Hmm.
and you know telling people, hey, I've got to fly tomorrow morning is a good, they'll let the up on the peer pressure a bit if you tell people that. But yeah, that's another thing I learned quickly was like, man, I cannot go out and drink too much, and I can't stay up too late if I'm gonna be flying tomorrow.
Yep.
And if I screw that up, well, then I just got to wait.
Hmm.
I just got to wait until I know I'm clear,
Yeah, absolutely.
clear-minded.
Now you, since you've sold the company and you're involved in some other business, obviously, but you've also got a sort of community focus and you do some philanthropy and stuff like that, particularly locally, from what I understand in Stillwater. Have you used your plane at all for those kind of pursuits, or is that just something that's like a local personal thing?
No, really haven't used the plane for any of that. Yeah, it's just been all local volunteer kind of work.
Yeah. What's your sort of your favorite philanthropic thing right now that you've got going on, or the boards that you're on and stuff like that? Because you do something with OSU from the Alumni Association and Medical Foundation out there.
Yeah, I was on the medical foundation, which is the hospital
Yeah.
here. Did that for a while, which was great and rewarding. We raised a lot of money to build, cancer center and different things like that.
Yeah.
It's a great organization. Right now, I'm on the Oklahoma State University Alumni Association board, and it's we're advocating for the alumni of the
Hmm.
university. It's not, it doesn't pull at your heartstrings
Yeah.
like the hospital,
Yeah.
but it's a great group of people. It's a big board of 20 people or so, and met a lot of great fellow alumni through that. Had a
Yeah.
lot of great experiences with it, so that's good. Probably the thing that has been kind of the most impactful that I've been related to, and my wife really gets more credit for this than me, but when I was the CEO of SST, we were giving employees some days for charity.
Hmm.
And I thought, we should do something that's impactful in our community and tied to agriculture. See if we can come up with some kind of food related, charity. And my wife connected with a Catholic charity who buys potatoes, or they connect kind of buyers to potato farms that, or processing facilities where, the potato doesn't fit right. It's like
Yeah.
these aren't going to be good for making chips
Yeah.
or whatever.
But they'll be fine to throw in
So
a stew for someone.
yeah, so we started working with this charity to truck down 40,000 pounds of potatoes every year, and then our employees would take a couple of days, distribute them all to the local food
Yeah.
pantries in Stillwater and surrounding communities. And it made a big impact, but through that, my wife recognized the way our food pantry system worked was just a disaster.
Hmm.
It was a whole bunch of churches doing things on different days,
Yeah.
and just kind of handing people whatever they had, and not tracking kind of who's using the different pantries and stuff. So
Yeah.
she connected with a few other people in the community who'd recognized the same kind of issue, and they started a new food pantry, got all the churches to put their effort together,
Hmm.
and they started a, a philanthropy called Our Daily Bread, and they set it up as a grocery store.
Yeah.
Guests can come in and shop, a certain amount based off income and need,
Amazing.
and that kind of thing. But that's been a very rewarding thing. And again, my wife's the one that's done more of the work on it, but
Yep.
it's, I've been really proud of her and the team that's done that around here.
Amazing. So our daily bread, we'll put a link in the show notes as well if people want to go check it out. I'm assuming that there's a website that people can go and
Yes.
find.
Yes,
How
absolutely.
cool! Yeah, that's a wonderful thing. We actually just did a tour last week of Catholic charities here in Tulsa, and they have a grocery store, and once a month people can come and they have a
Yep.
sort of sign up system because they have thousands of people who want to come and shop, and they can pick their stuff, and that's a very, very dignified kind of shopping experience, and that's amazing to see, and it's a yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like a very similar setup.
yeah, it was really really cool. So well, that's amazing. And we're going to go in for our sort of quick hit here towards the end. But you told me that you were not necessarily like an aviation nut, so you don't go and read all the history and all that sort of stuff. You transportation is your main thing, but you do. I definitely want to call out that we talked about this before is the commitment that you make to flying from a safety perspective is it's not something that you can do. And we always sort of harp on this in these episodes because it's a common thread is you can't kind of be an entrepreneur and do this on the side. It's got to be like part of your being and your
That's right.
I always tell people you got to treat it like a part of your job. You got to be thinking, how am I going
Yes.
to get 100 to 150 hours a year minimum, and a bunch of that has to be doing recurrent training and that sort of thing too. But yeah, just want to make sure I didn't miss that. How do you sort of, from a safety aspect, how do you sort of keep up? I'm assuming you do a recurrent training with the M600 every year to some degree.
I do. Yeah. I use Casey Aviation out of
Yeah,
Texas, a guy named Joe
yeah,
Casey.
I know, Joe. Yeah,
I use Chad Fortenberry is my CFI out of the Dallas area, out of Addison. And yeah, I spend a few days with him every year, which is great. But the biggest thing is exactly what you said. I preach this all the time. If you're going to get into this, you have to fly every week.
yeah,
You know, or at least every two or something. You can't let that rust build up. And there's a lot of people I see who they love the idea of it. They go get a pilot's license and maybe even an airplane, but then their lifestyle just doesn't fit with it, because they're a dentist
yeah,
and they have nowhere to go from a business perspective. And then it just becomes about personal travel. But with the kids stuff and the wife stuff and
yeah.
they're
No
not
one's
never able to
philosophy.
fly it.
Yeah,
For one, you need to make sure that it fits your lifestyle. If you're going to go buy an airplane and all of that, and then you've got to be committed to like you said, flying at least 100 hours a year. I mean, I think the insurance data is pretty clear on that. It's like if you're flying 100 hours or more, you're pretty safe. If you're flying under that, there's a lot of opportunity for risk. So I make sure that I fly every 10 days, whether I need to or not. And usually I have a reason, but if I don't, I just start calling up my family and friends and saying, "Hey, you want to go to
yeah,
Eureka Springs, Arkansas for lunch today?" Or call my family in Kansas, "Hey, I'm going to come up and hang out for a little bit."
yeah.
I just make up some reason to go somewhere.
Yeah, no, I'd definitely do the same. I usually sort of tell people plan out 10 hours a month and not 10 hours in one flight. It's, to and from is just block out on your calendar 10 hours to fly a month. And if you delete that because a business trip comes up and you can absorb that 2.5 hours a week flying, that's fine, but just try to block out that time because it's very easy with even only a couple of weeks to start getting a bit rusty or that sort of thing, or if you rent a plane, switching planes, that sort of thing. It's I just recently saw a gear up for that sort of same thing as someone switching between planes, and if you fly, I'm sure some of our listeners fly Barons, and in the old Baron, the flap and the gear switch is around the other way. If you're in pre 81 or 83, I think, and he was renting a plane, just renting an old Baron, and just rusty, hasn't flown in 3 weeks. Instead of retracting the flaps on the runway, retracted the gear, and it was, he wasn't the squat switch wasn't performing, and then it's down, and there's $200,000 worth of repair gone. So
Oh yeah,
uh,
yeah,
it's
yeah. That's something I have not. I've only ever flown one plane at a time, and I mean there may be some bad in that too. I don't know, but I would just fly. I flew the 182, then I just flew the Bonanza. I just one plane at a time. Now, since getting into that flight school, I've had the opportunity to go back and fly PA-28s
yeah,
and Cessna 152s and stuff, which honestly was a little bit intimidating. I was like, oh man, carb heat,
yeah,
priming the thing. Like there's actually way more going on
yeah.
in those little pistons than in the turboprop. So But it's been super fun too.
Yeah.
I just, because I stepped up, I forgot. I mean, my skill set was so different when I went back to flying those little planes
Yeah.
that they just felt so easy and safe. And, I remember most of my time being terrified in
Yeah.
those things when
Yeah.
starting out, right?
Yeah. So it's I've got a friend who's a PC-24 pilot and the former military pilot, and getting him in a small piston, it's kind of like holy shit, like it's very different. And I feel you feel every bump and everything like that. It's
Right.
yeah, it's a bit of someone who's got 10,000 hours, and then you take them in that, and they're worried as from flying. They're like, I don't want to fly the plane. They're too scared. Sort of thing.
Yeah.
Pretty funny.
Yeah.
Talk to me about. We'll do some quick questions here. Ideal sort of dream entrepreneur match to be your co-pilot. They don't actually have to be a pilot, but like, who would you like to go on a trip from Stillwater to say New York and have them sit beside you? That's like maybe an entrepreneur that you love to learn from, or someone who is a pilot that you just love to learn from. Maybe they don't even have to be an entrepreneur. Maybe they're what's the name of the OSU coach that just got fired? Sit next to him,
Mike Gundy?
Mike Gundy, and learn from Mike. There's
Yeah,
various
that
stories.
would be fascinating
Yeah,
if I could get him to open up and learn some about what he's got going
he
on.
might be able to buy you a new plane with his payout.
Yeah, he could do that. Man, I don't know. I'm struggling to come up with somebody. Um,
Oh, that's
I don't
right.
know. Maybe delete that part out of here because I can't.
That's all good. What about what's one improvement for general aviation that you think would help pilots? It can either be in the Midwest, or it could be as simple as like avionics that would help, and changes there, or regulatory changes. Or insurance? What do you feel would help the most? I mean, you get to see a lot of newer pilots coming through the flight school, I'd imagine, that are not just on a career path, but they want to use it as a business tool or hobby. Like, what improvement would you want to see?
Um, yeah, I guess mentioned seeing a lot of CFIs. I have had the luxury of seeing a lot of young CFIs recently, and I'm extremely impressed by them, by their level of training and
Hmm.
their discipline and seriousness. I mean, it's an impressive group of young people coming out of Oklahoma State,
Yeah,
and I'm sure all of these Part 141 schools. So that's awesome. But where we have a big gap is in the maintenance side.
yeah,
Aviation's been booming, and everybody wants to be a pilot.
yeah,
That's really cool when you're picking up chicks at the bar or whatever. But not very many,
yeah,
not very many people are signing up to be
yeah,
mechanics.
yeah,
And it's a great paying field, very interesting work. Probably a lot more protection from the automation that's going
yeah,
to come.
for sure.
But we've got a real lack there, and anything that we could do to increase the amount of people coming into the maintenance part of the world would be great.
Yeah, for sure. And what's crazy is you and I are in the MRO capital of the world, and there's still a massive shortage of A&P IAs. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I think part of it is because every time somebody becomes an A&P, they get sucked into one of those big
Yeah,
companies that's around here, that military,
yeah.
and yeah, that may be harder for us
Hmm.
than in other places.
Yeah, we've found, particularly over here in Tulsa, they get sucked into L3 Harris, or they get sucked into American Airlines, and they're paid extremely well. But even they're just desperate for more. So there's obviously massive demand, and as you say, as the fleet gets older as well, there's just more and more of that labor that's needed, and it's probably a long way away from automation. I think before robots are going to be fixing these planes, but. Dream plane. So you've already got probably many people's dream planes in an M600, but a dream plane someday. What is there? Is there something else, or have you already reached the pinnacle of where you want to go?
Yeah, I think I've said this every time I've had a plane that like, this is good enough for me. I don't need to upgrade from here. Right? I'm sure everybody says that. Just like the houses, they just keep getting bigger and stuff. But no, I feel very satisfied with where I am. If I ever do think about other planes, I actually think about going the other way. If I could have a PT6 on a smaller 2-seater type plane or 4-seater or something,
Yep.
But I don't really think about going up. And it's one of the reasons for that is that it's that mission piece. You've got to have a plane that matches your mission. And I just I never want to get to a plane where I feel bad flying it by myself.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm the only person in it. I don't want to have 8 seats sitting back there behind me, nobody in them. And I've got some friends that are in that category of having more money than sense, or however that phrase goes. More dollars. And they, because they had the money and there was a few of them partnering on it, they went and bought a Citation right out of the gate. It's like the first thing, they don't know anything really, but we can afford this. They're looking at me like, why do you have a little 6-seater turboprop? We bought this jet cheaper than that. But they figured it out since then. They're
engine time hit, and they're like, "Oh, it cost $600,000 for that little part."
Right. And 250 gallon an hour burn rate, and they have all these dreams of hauling a bunch of people around, but it turns out that it's usually just a couple flying each time. 80% of their use. So that's something I always tell people: just you got to think through what you're actually going to do, and then buy a plane that fits that 80%. And the 20%, drive commercial, charter something if you can afford it, whatever.
That's so true. I've got a friend here in Tulsa that bought a CJ3, similar thing. He's actually just gone back and bought a 182. He bought his old 182 back, similar age to yours, like a 2001, because he's like, I love this thing. There's only ever 4 of us flying. He's got 2 kids, and he still maintains his type rating because he's got a friend he can kind of wet lease another Citation, and but he's like, I just love flying the 182. I don't need that. And he was like, if I want to go to Bentonville for lunch, the Citation would cost me $6,000, and then this is $200 to go there and back, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so my friends with that Citation are actually looking to downgrade to a single engine turboprop.
Yeah, makes way more sense.
TBM or something. But,
Yeah, cool. Well, Matt, it's been awesome to catch up. I've taken enough of your time, but where can people find you online? Are you on X, or do they look for you at Crosswind Aviation and the FBO?
Yeah, you can find me on the Crosswind Aviation site or LinkedIn, or I try to stay off of X, and it just ruins my whole day every time I open that thing up.
It can be a wild place if you're not careful. But cool. Well, people can find you on LinkedIn. We'll put a link in the show notes, and a link to Crosswind and to the FBO too. And look forward to going flying with you one day.
Yeah, awesome. Likewise. Thanks for having me, Simon.
Cheers.
Hey, thanks for flying with us today. If you're getting value from these conversations with other pilot entrepreneurs and executives, do me a really quick favor. Hit that subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what app you're using, so you'll never miss another episode. And if you've got an extra minute and you loved us, drop us a 5-star review. Those reviews help other aviation-minded business folk find us, and honestly, they really just make my day. What about you? Have you got a story about using your plane to grow your business, or maybe someone you know? Well, shoot me a message on X at Simon G. Turner, or at the Chief Executive Aviator podcast, or pop me an email, simon@turneraircraft.com. See you on the next Chief Executive Aviator.